Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints. Just people.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. We're up to episode 13 of season 1 of Deep Space Nine. It's called Battle Lines. This one was written by Richard Danis and Evan Carlos Summers. The story goes to Hilary Bader, directed by Paul Lynch. It aired back on April 25th, 1993. In this episode, a runabout carrying Kai Opaka crashes on a planet of eternal war, where it is impossible for the combatants to die. We're joined yet again by Modi. Modi, how are you doing?
I am excellent. Thanks for having me back.
I know that you tweeted about this episode because you said that sometimes it's nice when you watching a Star Trek episode and a guest actor comes on that you know and you'll...
Oh, a great guest actor, yeah.
We're going to get into this. We'll probably start the discussion with something about this after we come back. I'm going to play an audio clip, and then me and Modi are going to come back, and we're going to break down the 13th episode of Season 1 of Deep Space Nine. It's called Battle Lines.
The leaders of our planet were unable to mediate a peace. Finally, they sent us all here and told us that we would serve as an example for the rest of civilization.
How did your fight begin?
Some say it was water, some say it was land. It's not really very relevant now.
And what do you hope to gain by continuing?
Vengeance. All of us have seen our families suffer incredibly at the hands of the Knoll.
The Knoll can say the very same thing.
And probably do.
If you must fight your war, the least you can do is learn to fight it more effectively.
Major, this is not our...
What do you mean?
There were no guards at the entrance when we arrived. You have no system to alert your forces of an attack. Your people are obviously unprepared for fighting close-quartered.
That's enough, Major.
We're trapped on this moon with only his forces between us and damnation. We have to defend ourselves to stay alive. Now, when the Knoll attack again,
I said that's enough!
We have to be ready!
This is not your war, Kira.
We used to defend ourselves better, Major. Safety perimeters, counterattacks, preemptive strikes. And then we realized that it was all pointless. When you cease to fear death, the rules of war change.
So I was watching this one, and I was thinking it reminds me strongly of the Vengeance Factor from TNG. Do you remember that episode? It's the one where they meet like the biker gang on that planet who has the woman who can touch people and kill them. She's like a super weapon, and then Riker kills her at the very end. He falls in love and then kills her.
Boy, I don't remember that one at all, actually.
It's a really terrible episode.
Sounds like a good one.
Yeah, it's really, really awful. But the guys here kind of remind me of that. And to me, what the big difference here is that we have Jonathan Banks as a guest role playing the leader of one of the groups, because I don't care about their names. I don't think it's particularly important, but there's two groups. He's the leader of one of them.
Ennis and the Nala Ennis. I remember that one.
They're very
briefly here.
Yeah, they're very close to each other. And what a difference the episode makes. Like it's almost like war in baseball, like wins above replacement. Like if you plugged in like an average level actor into this role, I think the episode would be a million times worse, right? Like,
yeah,
Jonathan Banks' war is like 15 or something at this point because he does a good job of being effectively a badass and also delivering the cliche Star Trek lines in kind of an original way.
But totally. Like, you buy it. I put away my notes at one point just so I could watch the episode and stop focusing on taking notes as soon as he showed up, basically.
Yeah.
My last note is, holy shit, Jonathan Banks. And I stopped writing notes after that.
Yeah, he's very, very good. And we can compare it to, like, Vortex, which is the episode prior to this. Like, that guy, the con man actor, was like a replacement level actor, right? There's, like, nothing special about him. And it drags down that episode.
He got the spot, but yeah.
And then Banks comes into this one, and he's really, really excellent in it. Did you notice it? Did you recognize him immediately, or did it take a little bit of time?
I was like, wait a second. I recognized the voice, and then I recognized the nose. And I was like, oh, my God, yeah.
He's like, let me die in peace.
Oh, man.
So the way I wanted to break into this episode is that We've complained in the podcast going into this one, we've had 12 episodes or whatever before this, where we were kind of wondering why the Deep Space Nine Season 1 is off to such a rough start that it is. And a lot of it is the sort of weak plotting. I think that in general, the show is produced better than TNG was at its first season. But in a weird way, the Deep Space Nine stories are more boring and feel detached, where TNG was almost the opposite, where the production was really horrendous, but the stories themselves were actually kind of cool ideas. In the first season of TNG, they were just terrible episodes. So it's kind of a reverse thing here, where the production of Deep Space Nine is better than TNG, but the stories are a little bit boring. And we were complaining that the series doesn't seem to want to use the setup that came in Emissary, where you're on this space station in the Gamma Quadrant, there's a wormhole, and Bajor has just gotten out of this occupation. To me, what's special about Battle Lines is that it's the first season in the first episode in the first season to sort of take the concept of the show and run with it in a way that they haven't done before. Would you agree with that, or would you add anything to that?
No, I would agree completely. I think it really uses the whole wormhole setup nicely, and it brings in new complications and new things that couldn't exist before, and it takes it in new directions that can be done now with this, being on the other side of the looking glass kind of thing. It definitely uses it well in this one.
And I think that it also brings in the Bajorans in a way that we haven't seen since. And I think that we bring back Kai Opaka, who I'm pretty sure we've only seen in the pilot so far. I don't think we've seen her.
I wrote that down. I don't remember her other than the Emissary. I don't remember her beyond that. So
yeah, I don't think she comes. I don't think she's in any episode before that. I don't think she's in anything after this one. So she's barely a recurring character. I guess she meets the bare minimum of being recurring. But they do a good job of fleshing out the Bajoran religion stuff, which I don't want to talk about right now. Let's kind of go into the sort of plot mechanics of it, and then we'll break down the individual aspects.
Sure.
This is a very good idea for a Star Trek episode. Would you agree with that?
I think this is a very good Star Trek episode. Yes, it's a very good idea for Star Trek episode. Yes.
Yeah, I think that the idea of people who are basically destined to fight endlessly. It's almost like a Greek god story in a lot of ways. Like you're just destined to fight in battle and die over and over, and you never get any kind of peace out of it.
And it works so poetically because it is that. I mean, it you can see right from the start that if they just stopped fighting, they would no longer have any problem on this planet.
Right.
Like their fighting is the only thing that's causing them grief, and it just works out. So I mean, the only way that a sci-fi thing can, in that human nature, that just can't. They have to have their vengeance, even though, whatever alien species that they actually are, but they're human enough.
And the thing about I think the script does a really good job of explaining their backstory. Like they can't remember why they're even fighting in the first place anymore. Like it's been going on for so long that they've forgotten. It was the lead. I can't. Do you remember what the character of the leader's name is? Like the actual character. I cannot remember. So we'll
it's like Shell something, another Shella or something like that.
Yeah, Shell L or something like that. We'll call him Jonathan
Shell,
Banks.
yeah, something like that.
Jonathan Banks' character has a lot of good lines about it, like when you can't die, war takes on a whole new meaning and things like that, like which is really sort of interesting quotes and stuff like that. And I think that just the central concept is really strong here. It's a very Star Trek-y thing, and I think that the episode is a lot of good in service of that story. They're not, the alien races themselves don't really matter. There's a reason I don't remember the character's name or the names of the different groups that are on it, because it doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is that that they need to fight and everything like that. So I've been talking for a while. How about you give me your sort of general rundown of this one?
So yeah, like I said, it's a good sci-fi thing in that it explores a human characteristic and explodes it into a different type of theater. And that's what good sci-fi does. And I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, it's taking an aspect we can't really easily talk about and then puts it in a different context that you can talk about it in. So you can see all these things that you can't like put your finger on exactly, but you know exactly what they mean when you see these two warring factions that can't remember why they're fighting, and they're just fighting because of the previous fight, basically.
Right. Yeah.
To the point where they won't even let each other leave because it would be they wouldn't get their vengeance then, so they have to make the person stay, even though they could just let one faction leave the planet and then be done. And when it comes down to Jonathan Banks still wanting to use the power as a weapon to kill them off finally.
Yes, I like
beautiful.
that. I like that ending. I think that to me the episode is the episode has to be the 42 minutes or whatever the hell these episodes are, and around like minute 32 the metaphor kind of wears off on me a little bit. Like I start to wonder, like, well, Jesus, why don't they just stop fighting? Like, why do they keep fighting like this? So
right,
you kind of have to go into it with the understanding that it's a metaphor. It's not really an episode that's supposed to be taken literally. You know what I mean?
And that's apparent even from the ending, where nothing changes for the people on the planet. They keep staying their own ways. So yeah, they're just there to represent. They're the allegory of it. They're not there to actually have any closure.
Right.
They're there to show us something about our own nature, basically.
Yeah, and I think they do a good misdirect, because I actually, going into the ending, I thought that the Jonathan Banks character potentially could have a change of heart about it. And I'm glad they went with the way that they went here. It's definitely the most downer of an ending out of all the episodes, I think, that we've seen so far. Maybe except for... And now even Captain Pursuit, the guy gets away. Like, they're hunting him, but he's running free and stuff. This is definitely probably the downer ending, I think, especially since they leave Kai Opaka there as well.
Yeah, she's going to be stuck there, but she's going to be the force for peace among them. That might be the difference kind of thing, I feel like. So there is a little bit of hope with her staying there, and maybe that's why she was brought there in the first place, I guess.
Yeah, do you think if you had to break it into like a percentage, what percentage do you think the situation is hopeful and what's not hopeful at the very end of it?
Well, it's like you said, it's a downer ending, but I do think that there is a little bit of hope, at least some. Maybe
so she has a chance.
Little bit that she can't die. I mean, she's just going to be, and she's not going to join a side. You know that much. They can't kill her. They can't get rid of her ever. All she's going to do is keep suing for peace and be just a lamb to the slaughter constantly, basically, probably, until they get sick of her being around. And they still can't get rid of her. I don't ever anticipate her picking a side in the battle, so she's just going to be forever. I mean, that's the thing. On a long enough timeline, she will convince them. Her peace will win out on a long enough timeline, I feel like. So there is some hope there.
It's interesting you brought up choosing a side. Originally, the script had the first draft of the script had Cardassians and humans on this planet, where it was the same situation, except it was humans fighting Cardassians as opposed to two alien species that we don't understand. And they didn't want to do that because they didn't want the show to have to pick a side in that conflict, which makes a lot of sense to me. You need sort of a thing that you have no insight into and you don't know the reason.
You just need red versus blue. You don't need them to have any other agenda beyond that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I thought that they did a good job there. And as you say, Kai Opaka is kind of the thread that goes throughout the whole thing. To me, it's actually... I understand her point in the story. I wonder about the effectiveness of using her. Like, I don't really understand why... As I said, the character is kind of the bare minimum of a recurring character. I don't really understand why... she was the one, if that makes any sense, like why she came back just for this kind of role. And I don't get I don't get the sense that, like, to me it feels like if they cut out a couple episodes where we learn that Kai Opaka is feeling like she's almost doubting her faith or something like that, right? Because she comes into this episode almost seeking, like, she wants to die in the Gamma Quadrant or something. She's like, "Oh, take me out there." That's
basically the gist of it. We don't really get what she's doing there, but the gist of it is that she has a prophecy that she's going over here to do something, and that's going to be the end of her life, and she's never coming back from it. but she doesn't know what it is.
She doesn't mention that at the start, right? That's not.
No,
okay.
I don't think so. I unless I missed it, but she does not. It's all kind of talked about in her dialogue that what she's experiencing. She's there because of some kind of prophecy.
Right. She seems to know that she needs to go to the Gamma Quadrant, basically.
And she seems to know as soon as she goes through it that she's not coming back.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. I totally understand the necessity of her there and her sort of role. I think what she's actually better at here, even though she provides a good ending and it's a good ending for a character and it makes sense that like her role in this story of the clans fighting is necessary. But I think that the thing that's actually more important, and it ties into my point before about this is the first episode to sort of understand the series, is that the Kaiopaka reveals something about Kira in this episode, and I think it reveals something about the Bajoran religion and the resistance that they put up against the Cardassians. So let me know if you think that this is wrong or if you would challenge anything. The thing with Kira here that I think they haven't really approached before is that the Bajoran religion seems to be fairly pacifist, right? So that's why the Cardassians probably took them over very easily. And it also makes it, the interesting turn there for me is that it's kind of heretical for the Bajoran freedom fighters to do what they did.
Yeah. I'd buy that.
Yeah, so that adds a lot of, that's why Kira feels
She wants
sad.
the prophets to forgive her. Yeah, at one point she's in tears because she doesn't think the prophets can forgive her. So I mean that implies that she's been outside the church basically,
right?
By being a freedom fighter. Yeah,
and I think that's a really good story to take from the setup that they have here, because if it's just Kira sort of fighting in a resistance thing that's like a gung ho, like we'll get basically the figurative Nazis out of here and we'll tell them to fuck off, making the Bajoran resistance actually something that was kind of shunned by the religion of the planet at the time is a much more interesting storyline to go with. And
that definitely is.
That adds a lot of layers to the character and to the occupation and everything that goes on, and to the religion itself. So I think that Kaiopaka is good in that kind of a situation. That's her role mostly for this episode.
I like episodes like this that you don't like. There's always a person, even if it's an ensemble cast, there's always a focused character, and you don't necessarily know it right away. This is a Kira episode, though.
Yeah,
and even though she's not at all, she's got a few great scenes and a couple big scenes, but it's not predominantly like worn out sleeve. That's the Kira episode, but it definitely is about her.
She has the biggest change throughout everything.
Yeah, she's got the arc here, and I like episodes that are like that. It's not really apparent that this is gonna be a Bashir episode, this is gonna be an Odo episode. I like it that it's subtle, that it turns out you see her, weeping with Opaka, and you're like, oh, this is a Kira episode. Okay, yeah, right, I get it now. She has the arc here. Okay.
What would you say the difference between this and Vortex would be? Because I don't consider this to be a great episode. I consider it to be a very solid episode that I think is sort of a standout in the first season, if I wanted to go that far. I'm interested, though, in why you think they're different from each other.
Well, this, first of all, has a better, more interesting, like, I guess if you want to call the warring people the B story of it, then that was a much more interesting B story of it than
almost
Vortex
the gimmick.
had.
It's really kind of the gimmick of the episode. Yeah.
It's the hook, right? Exactly. It's the hook of the episode. It's the log line. It's the thing that people are that people remember the episode for, but it's a better setup than the other one. Whereas basically Odo gets taken by a con man and led by the nose out to this random asteroid is the other plot line. Whereas this is much more interesting. It says something. It has something to say about the nature of humans and nature of the world and that kind of thing.
And I think I'd argue
it has more to say. This episode has more to say than the other one did, I think.
Yes, I'd agree with that. It has more to say, and it also, Odo in Vortex, we talked about it. He doesn't really have an arc in that. Like it feels like a
small piece, but
yeah, he ends up back where he started, basically at the very end of it. Where the changes that happen here feel like they actually have ramifications on the character, literally because Kaiopaka is no longer, like the Pope of Bajor is no longer around.
It's gone, yeah.
And Kira's learned something. Bashir learned that he can't be a little snotty shit to Cisco because he'll get yelled at occasionally, which is a good scene. What do you think of, did you say that you thought this was a good Cisco appearance? You might have said that at the start.
I don't remember if I did.
Okay.
It was a weird Cisco appearance because it's not his episode. I don't quite know he's there so they can get where they need to get without like having to have someone worry about, upsetting someone in command. They bring the highest person on the station there so they can do whatever they want, basically, of going to investigate this thing right away without getting clearance and stuff like that. They would call back to Deep Space Nine, I'm sure, and let them know where they're going. They're not going to go chase some signal. But Cisco being there allows him to do that. So I think he's more there as a plot element rather than a character element. But it's still okay. I mean, he's got a couple of good scenes and a couple of good lines and that kind of thing.
He gets he gets in a brutal fight scene. He does like a 360 spinning.
Yeah, he gets that going for him too. Yeah,
this is actually for Star Trek. It was a pretty violent fight scene in a lot of ways. It was pretty fast paced too. I don't know if they sped it up. It seems like they probably sped it up a little bit in post, but it definitely felt hard hitting in a way that a lot of Star Trek fighting isn't.
A lot of motion. There's a lot going on within the scene. There's like 3 or 4 people fighting at the same time. You don't usually see that with Star Trek.
And so what do you think of Cisco at this point? You've had a couple episodes. We're much later now. You started earlier. Has anything changed for you?
I mean, I haven't seen. I really only have watched. I guess I watched a few episodes in between. I don't know about him yet, to be honest. He seems so affable compared to the whole thing with when he's like just beaming when Opaka shows up, and he just seems like he'll do anything for her, and it just seems like this little kid trying to impress the Pope, basically.
Yeah.
It just seems so odd that he takes the risks and he doesn't really seem like he's got a plan about anything that he's doing, besides just trying to make Opaka happy.
Yeah, I think that his reaction to her coming on board is a little bit strange. It's another thing that makes it feel like there should have been a couple episodes in between where they got to know each other in a way. Yeah. Like he
right, because it's just that one episode or 2 episode, I guess 2-parter, but where I guess he was heavily influenced by her in those. It was a fairly spiritual thing he went through, I guess, in those episodes, though. So
yes, and I mean he is the emissary to the prophet. So like they don't mention that in this episode. I feel like they should. I feel like every time Kaiopaka or some of the religious Bajorans see him, they should kind of have a reaction to Cisco because he is kind of a prophet to them.
Right.
So like I feel that would go a longer way towards that, but I also don't get the sense that Cisco is hesitant in this role. He seems to he doesn't have any sort of standoffishness about this. And
he's very optimistic.
He is very optimistic
in general. He's very optimistic in this episode for sure. Even to the point where he's telling the folks that he's going to get them off the planet and he can take them with them, and before he even knows that's true or not.
Right.
He just says, we're going to take you all with us and get you off of here, and you can go your separate ways.
Oops, I was wrong.
And Bashir's like, nope, you can't. Yeah.
You will die. I like Cisco. I think that the thing I think that you get from Cisco here the most is his thing about his interaction with Bashir. I was kind of joking about it, where he snaps at Bashir about it. They're arguing about basically what the Prime Directive would do, like what's the regulation for dealing with these people.
I like the way he one-ups him on it too. His I mean, that's the thing. I can't begrudge him as not being smart or a good captain, because he does have those things thought through already before someone even says it to him. He knows what he wants, and he knows how to get it, and he knows how to play within his own rules and within the rules of the Federation. So I appreciate that he had like the answer ready to go for when Bashir challenged him on it.
It's kind of we've said it about multiple characters so far. Like a lot of the characters on Deep Space Nine are people who have their own sort of code about how they want life to go through. And, it stands in direct contrast to the Picard character, who is totally about regulation, except for in the obvious circumstances where the regulation is like the immoral thing to do. Sisko is much more relaxed about it, and you get the sense that because Deep Space Nine is kind of out on the frontier, he can get away with it in a lot of ways. Like his actions out there have to be more nuanced because he doesn't have the sort of backup of Starfleet and everything right at his fingertips. He's in much more of a precarious situation with stuff. And I think the character in general is much more willing to be flexible with outcomes as opposed to going by the book.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, definitely Picard is much, much drier, I would say, as far as the rules go.
Even Kirk, I think. Kirk's kind
Kirk
of...
too. Well, I mean, he's a little more swashbuckly, but still, he's still very much by the book.
Yes. Yeah. He'll bend the... Kirk will use the book to justify his ass kickings, I suppose it would be. But I always thought that the characterization of Kirk as a kind of like rogue captain is not really fitting. I feel like Sisko is more rogue than Kirk ever was. Kirk just had the benefit of sort of being isolated a lot more easily. Like no one could ever talk to him just because of the timeline of the series and everything like that. I enjoyed Battle Lines. I thought that it's a pretty solid episode. I would consider the B plot to be the O'Brien and Dax thing, and what you
that's the B or C, right? But it's still also very good. I think they arrive at
it's a lot of character
decently
work.
Yeah, it's good, and I think I liked O'Brien's work here too, in that he was like having this idea of a thing, and Dax is like that's a thing. He's like, well, it will be when I invent it. And basically, it's like it's such a good line.
He's too bad he's not an entrepreneur in the 20th century or something. I think that that scene between those two is just a lot of good. It's mostly for O'Brien, but it's a lot of good characterization, basically, of showing you that O'Brien doesn't fall for the satellite trick. He immediately recognizes that the satellites are what caused the ships to crash onto the ground. So you get a sense that the O'Brien is the common sense character, I think.
Yeah, he's analytic, and he's also he's a critical thinker kind of thing. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Exactly. And Dax is just kind of along for the ride. I still think that
she's there to drive the thing. Yeah.
I still think that Dax is probably the weakest character at this point. Because
despite the episode where it's the actual Dax episode, I guess.
Yeah, Dax the episode.
Yeah, Dax the episode. Despite having that in her history, she's still not a very strong character
I think it's just a miscasting. The Dax character needs to be a young woman who seems like she's 70 years old. You know what I mean? Like
she doesn't seem. She seems too bright-eyed in a way. Yeah,
and too excitable. Like I'd imagine that the Dax symbiote, I can't imagine getting excited about things. It's been through like 8 lifetimes.
You've been around for forever, right?
And the Dax character tends to get very excited and very interested in things. I guess you could say it's the process of the merging with the younger person, but I still feel
there's too much curiosity. I mean, I understand the curiosity of being female again versus male again, but it's just that's about I don't know. There's just too much. There's far too much lack of street smarts with her.
Right. Yes, I think that's the case, and it would just be casting a different casting and better writing for that character. I think would go a long ways. It's too bad she's not terrible. It's just it feels like she's
great, but
she's the alien character that they could have really done something with. If
they give her good reason to be so lack of street smarts, but the fact that she's got all the history of Sisko, that this was a capable person in the world and wasn't some rookie kind of person, it doesn't ring true for the character.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And that's I think that's it. We talked about battle lines. I'm going to play an audio clip, and me and Modi are going to come back and we're going to give our final thoughts. We're going to read patron thoughts. We're going to do all that stuff. So see you in a second.
The satellite is showing a power buildup about 800 megawatts. Probe destroyed.
Rio Grande to Cisco. Trying to lock on, Commander. Establishing pattern lock.
You can't leave without giving
Energize when ready, Chief. Opaka, if we can ever find a way.
My work is here now, Commander. But your power and mine will cross again.
All right, Battle Lines. We're going to wrap this up as we always do. We're going to read some patron thoughts. If you go to patreon.com/thepenskyfile and you support the show at any amount of money, you can leave thoughts about the upcoming episodes. I'll put a post up. You can leave a comment and it'll get read on the podcast, and that's what we're going to do now. So, Kyle Barrett writes, the episode seems like a wasted opportunity to bring Opaka back and tell a standard Trek story rather than expand the lore of Bajor and the Prophets. Having said that, it's a cool story, and adding Jonathan Banks is never a bad thing. I like the ending for the moon's inhabitants, but less so for Opaka. It seems like they just needed her out of the way for the upcoming election storyline. Kira continues to be insufferable at this early stage, and it may just be Sisko's best episode so far. Interesting moral quandaries, and he gets to beat the shit out of somebody. I found Kira's acting weak. I didn't find it insufferable, as Kyle says. What did you think of her performance here?
No, I think it was fine. I mean, it wasn't the best acting crying I've ever seen, but it was fine. Insufferable is a little bit strong, I think.
It's a tough position to put the act, like, when your role is basically just sob uncontrollably. It's not particularly, it's not very easy.
It's a tough line to walk, I think, is the problem most of
Yes. I think she's definitely been a weak actor leading up to this, but I do feel she's getting better. I do see improvement on her end, even just, 12 episodes into the season or whatever.
I guess there was that scene in the beginning where she was saying that,
reading the Kardashian.
She was reading the Kardashian logs, and that was a really cheesy delivery there too. So I mean, maybe they have a point.
Yeah, that scene's just to set up the fact of her being into the rebellion effort. Right?
Yeah, to remind us that she was in the rebellion, right? Exactly.
Yes, yeah. So, everything else there, Kyle. Kyle probably would grade the episode lower than I will, although I'm not going to really grade it that high. But we'll get to that. Joint Mango writes, Jonathan Banks, 5 exclamation points. Battle Lines is bomb, Jonathan Banks. But did Opaka really need to be condemned to that prison planet? We never checked back with her. Also, why would you give such similar sounding names to a new alien species you're introducing?
Well, that's part of the point of it, I think.
It's super confusing on first viewing, but it's great. I dig unhappy endings. I think it is kind of the point. It's tough. If the writer
make them so similar that they don't have any differences from the outside, basically. You can't tell the difference yourself.
That's true.
There really isn't that big a difference.
They are wearing the same exact clothing and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like they're not a different.
There's the Ennis and the null Ennis. They're not supposed to be. It's red versus blue kind of thing. It's not supposed to be. You're not supposed to identify with either one of them, basically.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that if the episode was weaker, I think that I would say it's more just bad writing, but I think the episode is strong enough where it seems intentional at this point.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's a pretty strong script, all things considered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm very happy with it. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for leaving your comments and feedback. There'll be more posts on Patreon coming up. I know it's kind of slowed down because Deep Space Nine, we're only doing it once a week as Discovery's going, but I'll put another post up. People can leave feedback for future episodes. I do need to remind people about that. I know that checking Patreon is not something that most people do in a day. Let's see here. If you guys want to leave your vote on what you thought you would give this episode on a 1 to 5 scale, if you're watching on YouTube, you can click on the little upper right-hand corner. There's a little circle there. Click that, opens up a poll, and you can vote. Let us know what you thought. Modi, why don't you tell me on our 1 to 5 scale, what you'd give Battle Lines?
Before I give my score, I'm going to remind people that your score is that it's an episode that you will not skip ever, and you would recommend other people to watch who are not familiar with the show to watch. So I'm going to give this one a 5.
Wow.
As it is specifically that for me. I would never skip this episode on a watch through. And if someone wants to ask me for a good DS9 episode, I'm going to point to this one. So it's not perfect. It's got its flaws, but Jonathan Banks solves all of those things, so it's fine.
You'll say Jonathan Banks with 6 exclamation points, and that'll be
6 exclamation points. I was going to give it a 4, and I decided to give it a 5. You're welcome, buddy.
I'll give it a weak 4, I think, because to me, this is, outside of the pilot, this is the only episode of the first season that I would show somebody, I think, like, to this point, where, and maybe I'll feel differently after we've finished watching all the episodes, but I feel like this is the first one where I'm like, okay, this is kind of what the series is at a certain point, and you can ignore the episodes before it. And on my scale, as you say, a 4 is that kind of a level where you would show it to somebody. So I'm going to give it a 4. It's a week 4. It's probably my favorite episode of the season so far. 13 episodes in, so you can take that for what it's worth. I enjoyed everything about it. Let's see here. I think that's pretty much it. I enjoyed it. You gave it a 5, so that's pretty revolutionary. I gave it a 4.
Pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. If you guys enjoyed the content today, you can go to social media. You can check all the links, Facebook, Twitter, blah, 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 all that stuff. It's in the podcast blurb. It's in the video description on YouTube. If you go to patreon.com/the Pensky File, you can also leave comments about the upcoming episodes if you support the show. Also, you get podcasts. We're talking about Halloween stuff coming up in the next couple weeks. Talking about RoboCop, we talk about other sci-fi, all that stuff. So if you enjoy the stuff that we do for the Star Trek podcast, you might check out the patreon.com/the Pensky File to get more stuff like that. Outside of that, the high-tier patrons get the shout-out at the end of the episode. Thank you very much, guys, for supporting the show. It's Tarek Latif, Joint Mango, Ben Douglas, Kyle Barrett, Vincent Adultman, Stephen Cobb, Tex Albert, Matthew Ross, and Mike Burnett. Guys, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You make the whole thing much easier to do, and it's very much appreciated. Modi, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Anytime.
You might be back with season 1. There's only a couple episodes left, so I can't promise anything. But if not, I guess you're happy to go out on season 1 with a 5.
No, it's a good one to go out on for sure. I don't mind.
Yeah. So we'll be continuing Star Trek Discovery. We'll be continuing Deep Space Nine until Discovery ends, and we'll kick back to the two Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine and Discovery are too similar to each other. I don't enjoy that at this point. And also, Modi, before you go. Discovery's abbreviation. Do you prefer DIS or DSC?
Oh boy. Yeah, I would say DIS probably.
Okay. That fits in with the Voyager and Enterprise, which is ENT and VOY. I feel that DSC fits the sound better in some way. Like Discovery, the abbreviation just like sounds like onomatopoeic or whatever about it.
Isn't like DSC like Stargate thing though?
Is it?
I think a DSC is used in Stargate.
No.
Yeah, deep space carrier.
Oh, okay.
That's what it stands for apparently on Stargate.
There's only so much deep space stuff I guess we can have. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.